Hi everyone, welcome to Google Street View, where we're going to talk about all the places that we can't visit. Thanks very much to Crime Writers for inviting us to again talk about the places that we can't visit, because we've all been stuck in lockdown for a year. And all of us don't live in the places we were brought up, and all of us write about places that we've not been or don't live in. So I'm going to just pass it around to everyone to give you a little intro to everyone, and then we'll carry on with some chat. Who wants to start? Lara?
Sure. So yeah, I'm Lara Dearman, and I grew up in Guernsey in the Channel Islands, which is where my first book is set. And I very often visited Sark in the Channel Islands, which is where my second book is set. But I left there over 20 years ago now. And I currently live in Westchester, New York. So long way away. That's me.
I have a question for Lara, if I could just interrupt at this point. Did you know Bergerac?
So Bergerac is quite a sensitive subject, because obviously he is based in Jersey, which is arch enemies to Guernsey.
Right.
So it's always a bit of a like Bergerac. Nobody wants to watch that because he's in Jersey, but obviously we all want to watch it because we're so desperately jealous, because Jersey is very famous because of Bergerac and Guernsey is not. Yeah.
Carry on. Whoever wants to go next, Will?
Hi everyone. I'm Will. I live in a big moose forest, swamp, bog in Sweden. I'm here. I'll give you a quick shot of the dog while I'm here. That's Bernie.
Aww.
Who is a 90-kilogram, 1-year-old St. Bernard puppy. And I was brought up in the East Midlands in the UK, in the Fens. But I'm here now in Sweden. And I'm a Swede.
Ooh. Whereabouts in the East Midlands? Well,
like on the edge of the Fens, no man's land. This place, desolate farmland, no real town, like a few blue-collar towns around and little villages. But
what would be the closest football club?
I'm halfway between like Nottingham, so Notts Forest, Notts County, and Boston. So like literally in the middle of nowhere, just there. Wow. Reclaimed land that probably shouldn't have been reclaimed.
And when global warming happens,
it'll be gone. Yeah. Same as my swamp here.
Well, I'm Adrian, and I was born in Belfast, grew up in a Belfast suburb, I suppose, called Carrickfergus. And today I'm not too far away from Lara. I'm in New York City.
I didn't know you were in the city. I thought from your book maybe you were up near Boston.
I'm down in the whereabouts in Westchester are you?
Larchmont.
I don't know where is that.
It's near New Rochelle.
Okay. You guys were the ones that started COVID.
I was just about to say, everyone knows New Rochelle because we're the epicenter of the coronavirus in the United States. We were on the first lockdown, man, like a month before everyone else. We had the National Guard on the streets and food packages, and
that worked well. That lockdown.
Yeah, they really managed to contain it.
Yeah. We must follow the New Rochelle model because it saved America. Well, congratulations, guys.
We did kind of get it all over. We got it all over with before you. Like I think I got coronavirus on March the 13th or something, right when the school shut.
Right.
Oh, I've managed not to have it, so that's quite good. I think Will's had it as well, haven't you?
You know what? I had it, and that period when I had it, I saved Adrian McKinty's life.
That's true.
I believe. That's not an exaggeration, right, Adrian?
No, that's actually true. We were supposed to have breakfast. I live around the corner from this diner, which is quite a famous diner, where it's under the rehearsal room where the Beastie Boys used to rehearse. It's one of the rare wooden buildings in my neighborhood. And I was supposed to have breakfast with Will. And then Will said, you know what? I'm feeling really sick. I think I might be contagious. Let's get a rain check. And then it turned out you were positive for corona. And you were not the super spreader. So thank you, Will.
I was close, man, because I was so tempted to have that breakfast because we didn't really know. This was end of February last year. We didn't really know what COVID was. And I was sick. I traveled from London. I've been in New York for 5-6 days. And I really wanted to see this Beastie Boys diner. Like I really wanted to see it. And I wanted to have a long and weird chat with you over breakfast, and so I nearly went through with it, but then I was like, no, I can't do this, and I was having like heart palpitations in the hotel room. So
Wow.
Did you come to New Rochelle, Will? Did you pop into New Rochelle on your way home?
Yeah, I went to all the hot spots of the pandemic.
Just left a bit of coronavirus.
I just walked the whole of Manhattan. I did 36,000 steps one day. I did like all the way up and all the way back again. So that was great, and that made me a whole lot sicker. So that almost killed me. Yeah.
I haven't done 36,000 steps in my life, I don't think.
I would never do it again.
Combined, I don't think I've done 36,000 steps.
It's not healthy.
No.
So shall we talk about the actual topic?
Where are you?
Who am I? Oh yeah.
Where are you?
I'm Susie Holliday, often known as SJI Holliday, or sometimes SG when I'm trying to be Scandinavian. I live in London.
Where are you?
I'm in London, and I'm from Scotland, and I've written about books that are set all over the place. So
whereabouts in London are you?
I'm in West London, kind of near Heathrow, so I get to see all the planes that I can't go on. I'm not bitter at all about this travel thing. But yeah, no, I've been down here for about 20 years, but I do spend quite a lot of time in Scotland, but unfortunately I haven't been able to go up there for a year, so that's a bit rubbish.
Right.
Yes, so but the interesting point I was thinking about this Google Street View thing, have you ever actually used Google Street View to write any of your books? Have you used it as a research tool?
I've used it as a massive time wasting tool. I have spent hundreds of hours in Kazakhstan, which no book of mine will ever be set there, or Irkutsk, or I don't know.
I've been to Irkutsk.
You've been to Irkutsk?
Yep.
Tell that story. What were you doing there?
Well, that's part of the Trans-Siberian.
So you got off.
Oh wow!
So yeah, because my book Violet is set on the Trans-Siberian Express, and one of the places we got off was Irkutsk. So I've been to Mongolia, which before that I thought was just a made-up place. So yeah, that was quite a trip.
What was
Susie, tangent. But was it you who saw Nirvana in the back room of a pub in Scotland when you were a teenager? Or was that Doug Johnston?
That was Doug Johnson, unfortunately, not me.
Yeah. Good story though.
Good story.
What was Irkutsk like?
Pretty bleak. You kind of got the impression that the people who lived there were kind of like, yeah, we know we're in Siberia and we can't go anywhere. It just feels really, really far away from all sorts of civilization. Right. But it's an interesting place. But yeah, I'm not sure I'd recommend it as a holiday destination on its own merits. But as part of a trip.
You're close to Lake Baikal.
Yes, Lake Baikal, which is the deepest lake in the world or something like that, which I'm sure is full of bodies. I mean, where else would you put them?
True. But that's not super interesting though.
It
How
was
was
really good.
Siberian? Was it fun or was it hell?
No, the train was really good, but so we went on this trip about I think it was 2006, and I didn't write about it until like 3 or 4 years ago. So I just had to kind of go on memory, but we'd kind of written a travelogue. So I had loads of pictures and loads of notes. So I just went back to that, and then I kind of assumed that it hadn't changed much. So I went online to research that, thinking, oh, maybe it has changed. Maybe they've got like really fancy trains and stuff. But from what I read, it was exactly the same, and it still is. So, but it was good. Yeah, I mean, first class on those trains is not quite the same as first class trains here, but it was good.
Do you have your own toilet?
No.
You share a toilet with other people?
Yeah, you share a toilet with lots of people, and you don't really have your showers. There's in the first class bits, they have like a little hose thing that's in the toilet. But other than that, you don't really have, there's no real facilities to wash. So yeah, everyone who gets off is quite smelly generally.
Yeah, I'm not doing that just because of the toilet.
Yeah.
I don't, toilet is my sacred space. I don't need someone banging on the door in Russian.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, you just drink a lot of vodka and you don't really worry about much of it after that. It's fine.
Well, that sounds okay.
What kind of train is it where you get your own toilet? That's what I want to know. That's an amazing train where everybody gets a toilet.
Pulled the Orient Express, mate. haven't you seen any of those movies?
It's the only way to travel.
I'm pretty sure Clara had his own toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere unless. Or maybe
let's talk about Adrian. You've set so obviously you set a lot of books in Ireland, and then your most recent one has been set in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us.
Well, the funny thing about I grew up in Belfast, obviously, but none of those books were actually written in Belfast. They were all written. I was living in Melbourne, Australia at the time, and every single one of those was written in Melbourne, which was very odd because it was usually about 40 degrees Celsius outside, very sunny. We lived near the beach, and so there was zero incentive to go near my computer whatsoever. So it was actually quite a heroic task I did writing those books when I could have been just lying on the beach with a drink with a parasol in it. And so to actually write those books, I had to. This is a bit weird, but I had to get. There's this on YouTube. There's lots of things of rain falling. There's rain falling on. I know them all. I can recommend if you're ever looking for a rain falling YouTube video. There's rain falling on a tin roof. There's gentle rain falling. There's thunderstorm rain. There's Irish rain, which isn't very good because very quiet, misty Irish rain. So I would put on one of those 5 or 6 hour rain tapes, and I'd crank up the air conditioning really cold, and I'd make a bad cup of tea and close all the blinds. And then it began to feel slightly like Belfast. And then I'd get maybe some soggy old digestives to eat while I was working to get the ambience. And then only then could I convince my brain that I was back in Belfast and we could actually do some writing. And as long as you didn't spoil the illusion by looking out the window.
And Lara, did you write about Guernsey when you were away, or did you start writing before you left?
It's really interesting, and I wonder if Adrian was motivated by the same sort of feelings as me. But I actually started writing about Guernsey when I lived in Singapore, which is just as far away as you can get, basically, and in a similar thing, you know, obviously tropical heat. I guess the only thing it has in common with Guernsey is that it's also an island. But a lot of it for me was motivated by kind of feelings of nostalgia and homesickness and wanting to reconnect with Guernsey when I felt so physically removed from the place. So yeah, and similarly, very difficult to get into that frame of mind. And I don't think I was using Google Street View back then, but I certainly had maps, unlike all the old tourist maps and stuff like that, just because I'm quite obsessed with getting stuff right location wise. I would find it actually impossible, I think, to write about somewhere that I hadn't been. So yeah, I would be in Singapore kind of like poring over maps and books and fact checking and trying to get into the Guernsey atmosphere. I didn't use rain or mooing sounds, probably would have been helpful. I could have like got YouTube filled with cows on in the background. Didn't think of that.
There's the obsession to get things right is quite interesting, because there's the famous Lee Child story that he set the first 2 Jack Reacher novels in America, a country he'd never been to.
Yeah, I know people do it really successfully all the time.
And he got away with it. I mean,
yeah.
I assume he did the research and knew the idiom and got away with it. But it's definitely a tightrope walk.
What about you, Will?
You're also in exile.
I was going to say to Will, did you move to Sweden just so you could write a book there, or was that your main motivation to leave the UK?
I wanted a second bedroom. That was my motivation. So yeah, I am an exile, Adrian. I just wanted, like, I lived in a 1-bedroom flat in London for so many years, 15 years, and flat shares and, you know, the typical thing. I just wanted some space where I could grow some potatoes and have an enormous dog. So that's why Sweden seemed like a good place. The land in the rural areas is really cheap. So we found this place on the internet in 2008 over the crisis. And it was dirt cheap. We flew over and the real estate agent brought us here. He picked us up at the airport because he was so impressed that somebody wanted to see this book. And we bought it. So that was the motivation. I just wanted some fresh air and live a low-cost life. And I think I knew I was going to be a writer, and I knew that living a low-cost life is probably a good idea if you're a writer. So there's nothing to spend your money on here. You know, I could maybe buy a new chainsaw and dog food and stuff, and that's about it. So it's a good place to be a writer.
Yeah, but then you've set your next book back in your hometown, sort of, or your home area. What was that like to kind of revisit it?
It was good. I can't take any credit for that decision, because it's always like a completely unconscious thing for me. I just had an image in my head of this farm, this little 2 up 2 down farm cottage, very similar to something that I was brought up in for a period of time, with kind of a bolt-on breeze block bathroom that the farmer built on the back of the cottage, very isolated. And I saw that farm cottage, and that's where the story was, because I saw a character walking around the farm cottage and in and out, and she never went very far. And I came to understand that she was being held captive there. So that was the story. So yeah, it's not a conscious thing like, where should I write the next book, where should I set it? I wish I could do that. I just kind of have I pluck an idea out of the air and kind of go with it. And it was nice to write where I grew up, write the nature and the landscape and the weather and the dialect. That was fun. And I got to go home, see my mom, and kind of I used to take a little train out to a small Fenland town, and they have a windmill, and I used to walk up the windmill 6 stories up ladders and stand at the top for a few hours, just kind of daydreaming and thinking and looking at the view. And a lot of the book came from that.
It's very cool. I've got a bit of a Fenland book as well. The Lingering was set in Fenland, and it's just such a lovely, like, bleak, dark place. It's so different from living in a city.
It is. It's so bleak,
atmosphere.
Bleak and beautiful at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So,
did you visit the Fens when you were thinking of writing that?
Yeah, because my husband's family are from East Anglia, so I've spent a lot of time up there, and I always wanted to write something there, and I think it's got quite a spooky feel to it. And I used to just like driving around all those kind of like really flat, like straight roads and on the flatness, and then you find some little village and it's got some weird history. There's kind of a lot of witchcraft history around that area as well, which is kind of what I built into my book. So I think I write about a place I've been or a place I want to go. I've got some stuff. I'm having to bring stuff out of my mind banks now because it's been a while since I've been in there. But yeah, I mean, is there anywhere you'd really want to go to set a book? Lara, have you got what's your plans?
I mean, I think for me, location, I have so far always started with the location and then kind of created a plot. And I don't know if that's because I started with the Guernsey book because I wanted to write about home, but we're spending quite a lot of time back and forth on Cape Cod at the moment. So I have a feeling that I'll probably start with a place on Cape Cod and then think what could have happened here, what could happen here, which is kind of what I did with the Guernsey and the Sark books. They're kind of dark, brooding places. And I started there and thought, okay, what bad shit can happen? Like, how can I ruin this gorgeous, beautiful, dark place? Which I think you have to be a bit careful with, depending on how much you care what people think. But like I wrote both of those books out of a place of real love for the locations, but it doesn't stop people getting a bit upset when you fill the locations with really nasty people.
Yeah.
They take it, I had a couple of people from Sark particularly who reviewed the book and said, well, it doesn't paint Sark in a very good light. I wouldn't recommend it, which is crazy to me because I felt like I painted Sark in the most fabulous light that I could. I just didn't paint the made up people in a very good light, but they weren't real. But yeah, I'm going to go up to Cape Cod in my next one, I think. Could
you set like a monster shark attack thriller in Cape Cod? Do you think like a Jaws sequel? Would that work?
100%. I mean, we were in the beach in Martha's Vineyard last year, swimming, the one where the very first shark attack takes the skinny dipping girl, and like we are having a great time with it. And we actually also got evacuated off a beach a couple of days before because there was a great white shark in that, and they did all the flares and everything, and we're trying to be cool, and actually I was completely shitting myself. So every time we swim there, we're like, shark, only joking, but maybe, So yeah, I feel like there's a whole book of definitely crazy shark attack, or was it? That would be a good one.
Brilliant.
I think we need more of those thrillers, more of those 80s kind of 70s, 80s stuff, the monster stuff, and also the kind of Michael Crichton thrillers. Oh yeah. It needs to be a resurgence of that.
Definitely. So what are you working on next, Adrian? Are you visiting somewhere new, or is it somewhere else that's
not really. I I agree. I love Massachusetts as a place to write stuff because it's got all these weird layers of history, unlike most of America, which is really new. And Massachusetts has got like 4 centuries of weirdness. And especially when you get in that part of like Cape Cod on the North Shore. I mean, it's what you guys were saying about the Fenland. All those nutters left there and came to that part of Massachusetts. So like there's a Bury and there's an Ipswich and there's an Essex County, there's a Suffolk County, there's all these little, Fenland, weird East Anglian, Bolton, Boston. There's all these like weird little towns, and that's why it's so interesting, because there's definitely, and that's where Lovecraft sets all his books. All his books are set in like, the northern shore of Massachusetts, and all these little interbred, strange East Anglians and Lincolnshire people came over.
Easy, Adrian, easy.
Yeah. and so, well, do you ever see the film Kill List?
Yes.
The thing about Kill List, people don't understand. It's basically a true story. I mean, I think that's the way those places really are. Like, I think that's why I'm so scared to be in like, Norfolk, lost in the flatlands at night, because people think, oh, it'll be charming. It's like Alan Partridge. No, it's not going to be like that. You'll be in some witchcraft ceremony, at 4 a.m, being led into a Wicker Man. And
it's such a strange film though, because it changes tone completely.
Oh yeah, that's what freaked me out, because I don't like horror films.
Yeah.
And so I had gone into it thinking it was a kind of gritty noir, maybe with comedic elements, because I'd seen his previous film Dawn Terrace, which is kind of like this funny noir story. And about halfway in, you go, there's not many laughs in this, and then it goes dramatically downhill in the second half. You're just going, well, that was the most horrific thing I've ever seen, ever. But yeah, I feel all those things are true. Like even as Will was talking about the windmill, I got chills thinking about young Will up there at the top of the windmill, looking at these flatlands, wondering if I had a rifle, I could stay up here for hours. They'd never get me.
That's dark.
If I won.
Well, man, I had chills about you this time last year when you bugged out of New York and moved to a murder cabin in the woods.
Yeah, we did.
And you kept saying that the branches of the trees were scraping the windows at night, and that freaked me out.
It was not a good place for us. We were here in April, and then my wife's mother shares a cabin in the woods with her sister, and it's literally in the woods, so the trees scrape the windows at night. And I grew up in an urban environment, and I've only ever lived in urban environments, so I was crying with fear the first night when I could hear the trees, and you would open, and you would hear a weird noise. And it didn't help the first day we moved in there. They said, no, just be careful, because the bears are waking up this time of year. And this is upstate New York. And so I'd hear a weird noise, which I'm 100% sure was not a bear, but any kind of noise you would hear. And you just open the door and look into this blackness. There could be a bear 6 inches away with this big wet nose, and I wouldn't know. And that was a little bit existentially terrifying.
I walked about a place where I could have got eaten by a bear, and I didn't know about it until afterwards. I was in Romania with my mum, and we decided to go walking in up this mountain, which we thought was really lovely, and it was really quiet. There wasn't that many people around, and there were some signs saying sort of, don't come in this bit and whatever. But then it wasn't until we got back down that they told us that someone recently had basically fallen asleep on a bench in the town and been eaten by a bear.
Oh my God.
So yeah, and they said you really shouldn't have gone up that mountain. Like they did do tours up another mountain, and then they called them off because it was the wrong season to be walking around bear country. But we're just like quite happily walking down this path going, yeah, this is fine. And so yeah, I could have been eaten by a bear. That would have been quite tragic, I suppose.
Yes.
I quite like that frisson of danger around here. I feel like I didn't get that growing up in Guernsey. The scariest thing you get there was like, I don't know, a large cat or something. But we get We get coyotes around here. I don't know. Do you get them in the city, Adrian?
Oh, there is a famous coyote in Central Park at the moment. Sometimes when I'm walking, if you walk on Central Park West about 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock, you can hear him. I've never seen him, but you can hear them making that weird, it's chilling noise, that weird.
It's very scary. And I've seen them just walking. And we're very suburban here, but I walk the dog around. There's a little marshland around the corner from our house. And like you see them in the marshes and everyone says, don't worry about it. Just pick up a big stick. But then at night, after they've made a kill, I don't know what they kill, you hear them howling like wolves.
Well, it's not a nice noise,
it's not a nice noise. No, and they don't look very friendly, I have to say. I tried to be brave, but I wouldn't want one to come closer than about 25 feet away from me.
Will, have you trained your dog to attack?
I've tried, man. I've tried. He's got no aggressive instincts whatsoever. He if somebody comes to the door, he just wants a hug. He's like 15 stone, totally useless in that regard. But we have wolves here, so I've like you with the coyote. I've heard the wolf once. Opened the bedroom window and I heard a wolf howling outside. This was about 5 or 6 years ago in the winter, and I had this real visceral fear, in my bone marrow. This is a true predator, a genuine predator that I am in the forest with for the first time. That was quite weird. But Susie, what you were talking about, the bears, somebody tweeted me last week, because I don't live in bear country, but I'm like a couple of hours south of bear country in Sweden. And they said, can you give me a tip here? How do I, like it's springtime, how do I feed the birds right now without feeding the bears? I think they were in Alaska or Canada. And I was like, you don't feed the birds. If there are bears around, you can't feed the birds. Like, leave the birds to it, they'll be fine.
Yeah, scary.
Yeah. Susie, whereabouts in Scotland are you from?
I'm from near Edinburgh.
See, the joke there would have been, I was nearly eaten by a bear when my mother and I were on a trip in Glasgow. that would have been the pivot. And people would have.
I was going to say, like, there's plenty of wildlife around where I live, but I think it's human. I live in a flat, like, so there's lots of other apartments around and lots of interesting people, and at the moment there's a lot of people who've started to play really, really loud 80s music blasting out of their balconies. I think they've just had enough. They've just gone like completely insane now, so
everyone's just cracked. Well, we're all cracking. I think we've all lost our minds after a year of this. Nobody I know has gone to the 80s music stage. That seems like a bad stage.
That's the end. That's the end, I think, before you actually launch yourself off your balcony. So
is it the Smiths? Because that's if it's the Smiths, you need to call Samaritans.
I have got some questions here from our lovely audience. Let me just start with one from Leslie Turrell. Is location more important than characters in your books? Anyone?
That's a good one. I think, like I said earlier, I'm not sure it's more important than character, but for me, it's my starting point and always has been. I just feel like I need to be inspired by the place where the book is set. And then I think I go to the people that would live there. But
yeah, definitely.
I quite like location as a character. If that doesn't sound too funky.
I would 100% agree with that. I write two types of books. I write noirs and I write thrillers. And with the noirs, location is everything. I mean, it establishes tone and mood. And as you say, Lara, it's another character. And the location has to be 100% right. Whereas with a thriller, it's more about the story momentum and the characters coping with events in the story. So really, you could substitute one location for another location. But with the noir, absolutely, it has to be 100%. Location is so important. And also when I'm writing a noir, I can slow everything down, which I can't really do in a thriller. And I can spend just a couple of pages talking about the weather or the view out the window or the vibe and the mood, which is really fun to do if you've got a nice, interesting location.
I like that scene that you wrote where I think the police are on a hilltop over Belfast, and there's there's unrest. There's a kind of a riot going on, and they're talking about, and it's raining, and they're talking about how kind of beautiful that Veste can be.
We used to go on our bicycles, and we would bicycle up to the top of the hill and look down on the riots when Belfast had really big riots. The riots that we've had for the last week, they call those riots? These kids today? I'm talking about citywide apocalyptic riots on every street. Not a bunch of 12-year-olds in hoodies throwing stones at. I don't how they got in the front page of the Guardian. I'll never know. Because these are not great riots, but like the big citywide spectacle riots when the whole city would be in fire and they'd be there. So we used to go up on our bikes up into the hill and watch these, and as apocalyptic and terrible as it was quite the spectacle. It was quite fantastic and real kind of sort of an amazing thing to witness. I mean, they say that Winston Churchill during the early days of the Blitz used to go up onto the top of the 10 Downing Street roof and watch the Blitz just to be part of the spectacle that was happening before they persuaded him to go down into the Cavanagh war rooms and stuff like that. And I can take in that vibe. When we had the Black Lives Matter riots earlier in the year, I would go down sometimes in early in the morning afterwards. And I remember those smells were just like the smells of Belfast. So you could smell tear gas, and you could see like rubber bullets and on the ground, and the debris and the gasoline smell. And it was really heady, and was giving me interesting flashbacks to the 1980s. So yeah, that was like the original question was about place and how important it is, and I think absolutely it's very important. Like when you were writing your book back in England, like were you vibing on the smells and the textures and the sounds and the flavor and all that kind of stuff?
I was, yeah. It's interesting you talk about flavor, because food is a big part of that book, and the local food, the kind of the beige carb heavy food of my childhood, where I was eating just like I felt like I was eating potato sandwiches stuff and chips with potato on the side. Like everything was potatoes and baked goods, and I do miss that stuff, and that makes its way into the book. The food all comes from this local spa shop, and it's all like boil in the bag cod in parsley sauce and Arctic roll and Mighty White and all this stuff. Yeah, the best stuff. And that sent me back. Thinking about that and kind of tasting those foods sent me back. Also thinking about my granddad's dialect. He had this really thick dialect, even more thick than I had when I was a kid, that's almost unintelligible for outsiders. And I used to think back to what he used to say, his stories, and that sent me right back there as well. And I am obsessed with landscape and place, and that intersection of character and landscape. Like I always start with a figure, kind of a faceless figure. I don't really care what they look like ever, in a place, in an interesting place. And I want to know how that place affects their state of mind, their family, their relationships, their community. And that's why I write, really. Just I'm interested in how people live in different places and how their surroundings affect them.
And I have a question for Lara. I mean, Lara, for you, that must have been really interesting growing up in a place where basically everybody knew you and you knew everybody else. And it was a very intimate world. And then to go to first Singapore and now Westchester, where no one will say hello to you on the street, but to go back to a world where everybody knew your business.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that I started writing about Guernsey when I was in Singapore, which felt, even though it's an island, just so big on a global stage, I guess. I don't know. I think I had a bit of a how did me, just a small town girl, end up in the middle of Asia, and we traveled a lot when we were there, China and New Zealand and Vietnam, and just I think I was desperate to be, in a way, rooted back in that small town environment. I think I felt very untethered when I was in Singapore. We moved back to London. That's when I wrote the books, and I did lots of visits back to the Channel Islands, which was great, and I felt really helped to tether me again to my home, which has always been really important to me. But interestingly, I do not feel the same way here in Westchester. And I think maybe it's because we've landed in a small town. Like, we have a population of 6,000, and it kind of feels a bit like Guernsey, but with the advantage of being able to get in a car and drive for 20 hours without stopping. But yeah, it's a small town. Everybody does know everybody, actually. Like I will walk on the street and say hello to people, and there's lots of small town gossip, and I think that's why I feel much more settled here. And interestingly, then have written a book here, sort of in a location, because it feels like home to me.
Right. Susie, what about you? When you moved to London, did you feel there was a big culture shock from Scotland?
Yeah, well, like Lara, I grew up in a very small place. My town was probably about, I don't know, 8,000 people at the time. So it's a bit bigger now, but I don't think I could have written about that time when I lived there, but I also felt like everyone knew me because my dad was quite a prominent businessman, because we had a pub and everyone knew me, and everyone knew me as like Alan's daughter, not as Susie. So that was quite like, I had no identity until I left. And I think that's kind of the reason that I did leave. But then when I was trying to decide what to write, I kept changing my mind. And in the end, I wrote about the town I grew up in, but I changed it. Like I fictionalized it because I didn't want to write specifically about exact locations and things. This is when I did get a map, and I drew a map of where I wanted it to be, and I sort of picked up some of the places and things. And to people who live there, they recognize certain parts of it, but it's kind of a made up version. But I think I would have found it harder to write that if I was living there, because I feel like people would still have been, yeah, well, Alan's daughter's written a book now and it's set here. So it's like I needed that distance, which is actually a question from Louise Fairbairn. Is it easier to write about a place when you're further away from it? And I think in my case, definitely. But when you're in it, it's different. I mean, the book I've just written is kind of set in a nondescript part. It's a sort of where I am now, but it's not really in detail, because I feel like I do have to be away from somewhere a little bit to get some different perspective on it. Don't know if any of you have had a similar thing. I mean, obviously you've had to use your rain to get into the Belfast mode, Adrian. But
well, the other thing is that I used to worry a lot about getting things wrong. Because I was not just writing about Belfast from 10,000 miles away, but I was also writing from 20 years earlier.
Yeah.
And so I used to really obsess and getting quite a panic that I was going to make sure I get the food right, what was playing on the radio right. And so I would do like all this copious research. And I remember I did one event at the No Alibis bookstore in Belfast. And I think it was for like my very first Sean Duffy novel. And we were doing the Q&A afterwards, and somebody stood up, or maybe it was in Carrick Library, I can't remember, but it was a friendly environment. And so I wasn't ready for the hostility. And someone stood up and said, you write that Sean Duffy drove from West Belfast to North Belfast along the West Link in November of 1981, when everybody knows that the West Link wasn't opened until January of 1982. How do you explain that? And then sat down with a look of triumph on their faces. And I was quite badly thrown, because this is exactly the sort of thing I had feared. And I was struck by a lightning bolt of inspiration, which I've since used all the time. I say, well, look, sir, Sean Duffy is a fictional character and his adventures take place in a fictional universe, which is identical to our universe in every respect, except for the fact that the West Link opened 2 months earlier. And then he went, oh, okay.
It's not what you can say to that, is there?
Yeah.
I pedestrianised the high street in my old town because I just thought it needed to be done. And there was quite a few people who were like, that would be great if they did that. So,
you can actually improve the place. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. We've got a question for Will here, actually, it was a bit linked to what you said before. in The Last Thing to Burn, you had to practically live in the mind of your captive character. Was that challenging, both in terms of the gender difference and the psychological isolation of the character?
It was. It's the most challenging thing I've written, because it's such a tense novel. And I felt, for the first time, I felt like I had a knot in my stomach the whole time, which was weird. And at the end of the book, every time I rewrote it and worked on a draft, I felt really, really emotional at the end of the book. I think, again, I don't feel like I've got any control over this kind of thing. It's just, I just go with it. And with this one, it was just it was all about feelings. It wasn't an intellectual novel in any way. It's all, I felt my way through it. I just kind of went with it, and it was uncomfortable, and it's still uncomfortable now. Like it's an uncomfortable book. It's a disturbing book, actually. And like the Tuva books are very comforting, and there's a lot of humor and light in those books. And the town that I create there is basically like the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory town, like of my childhood. So I love walking around those streets in my head. But with The Last Thing to Burn, it does feel very real and very dark. Yeah. But then the flip side of that, as with my favorite novel, The Road, which is here, like the darker you get and the more bleak you get, the more beautiful the little moments of lightness are, and the more powerful they are. Like in The Road, the way McCarthy writes about those tinned peaches and the pears and the Coca-Cola and those little glimpses of love between the father and the son. It's the same, but not as good in my book. Like, I think that because it's so dark and so difficult, those little glimpses of hope and of light really are very impactful.
Another question here, which is not about location, but it's kind of about location of your brain. Have your lockdown dreams or nightmares had a significant effect on your writing, either in content or ability in the past year? Who wants to go with that one?
I don't have an answer to that specifically, but last night, really weirdly, I dreamt that I was like a bank robber, and I was driving a Porsche, and I was taking directions from Linwood Berkeley.
Wow, what a dream.
That is a true story. Like, how this utterly bizarre. I woke up and I was like, oh my God, Linwood Berkeley just told me to go collect some like drugs or something and drop it off at his house in Toronto.
Are you reading his new book at the moment, or is it just completely random that it was him that came into your head?
I think I might have just seen a tweet yesterday or something.
Yeah, I've had some very strange dreams. I think every single day I had nightmares for a long time, probably about the first 6 months, I was having nightmares every single night. I think it's just all that, it's just too much going on, isn't there? So your brain can't cope with it. And then everything you see is just online. So it's like a mixture of every possible thing coming together. But I have found it as quite, I haven't written a lot in this last year because I've been editing and doing other things and planning stuff, but it kind of sparked my brain to come up with loads of different ideas. Not that I'm necessarily all things that I'll write, but it definitely sparked. But I couldn't read for a long time. I don't know if anyone else had that, but probably about 4 or 5 months I couldn't read anything.
I'm still struggling with that. I've been mostly reading nonfiction, which I find easier to get into for some reason. But yeah, I found it really hard to write as well. It's just too much.
Yeah, me too. I've just been watching Netflix. I mean, I've basically seen everything on Netflix. It's been very difficult to read and very difficult to write just the last year. And also because my kids are both in doing homework and stuff, and they're here with us all the time. And so, you're there's no privacy or place to go really. And at the end of the day of doing nothing, I find myself knackered, but I've done nothing today. I didn't even leave the apartment. All I did was like help the kids with their algebra and, a couple of other things. And by 7 o'clock, I'm just longing for a gin and tonic and Netflix oblivion. And
the kids being at home has been like unbelievable, but yours not back yet?
2 days a week.
So ours went back full time for the first time in 391 days on Thursday. And I wrote 1,000 words yesterday. And it is not a coincidence. Like
391 days, you weren't counting them down or anything.
I did not work it out. The day before they went back, I did not count every single day that they had been home.
That's unreal.
I had exactly the same thing as you guys. I couldn't read, I couldn't write. Like this time last year, I was full apocalyptic in my imagination. Like end of the world, this is going to be some big Malthusian event, Black Death, Mark II. It took me ages to get back into it. And then, like you, Lara, it was nonfiction. Like for me, it was rereading Bill Bryson's. And not only Bill Bryson's, but it was Bill Bryson's on tape that I used to listen to on my Walkman as a teenager. And that was a huge comfort to kind of travel with him when we couldn't move around. It was a good thing.
So where do you want to go when we get out? Is there somewhere that you'd like to go just for fun, or somewhere you'd like to go to research a book, or what have you been dreaming of?
Going back to the Jaws idea, there's a famous story about Michael Caine when he said, "Why did you do Jaws 4?" And Michael Caine says, "Well, because on the first page it said exterior Bahamas morning." I thought, okay, I'll do this. I just want the tax man to know that when I go to Hawaii or the Bahamas, this is somehow going to be research for my next book. So it's not just a trip, but it's actually tax deductible trip. So I feel like that's very important to get that on record. So if I go to the Bahamas or Miami Beach or wherever, it's all for sound reasons. It's all work. There will be no me just lying in the sun getting drunk by the pool. It's all vital research. Yeah, anywhere that's not here, really. I remember in about December, Lee and I, my wife and I, took a trip to New Jersey. That was our big trip was New Jersey, because the swimming pools were open in New Jersey and they weren't in New York. And so we went to a hotel right across the river. I mean, you can see the hotel we went to from our apartment window, and right across the river. And we had the greatest weekend ever, because we went swimming in the hotel pool. No one else was allowed in. You had to book your pool. So we had this whole pool. And then we ate in the restaurant, and then we just got drunk at night. So that was like the greatest trip ever to northern New Jersey suburb, where it was felt a wee bit normal.
Yeah, I feel the same. I don't feel like I need to go very far, strangely. I mean, we're kind of dream planning a big trip to Japan, which wouldn't be next year, but maybe the year after, because the older two kids are obsessed with anime and we've always wanted to go. So it's like, yay, ticks all the boxes. But honestly, I would be quite happy with just like a couple of nights in a cottage in the woods or something, just like not here, basically.
We can swap anytime you want.
Yeah. I'm very happy to. We should get something like this sorted out. But yeah, I mean, we've been lucky enough to go in the summer. We did go up to Massachusetts for a week, and we went to Maine for a week, which was really nice, and I feel really lucky. But the thought of getting on an airplane right now, I hate flying, but I would so happily just get on a plane to anywhere.
Yeah, I would be quite happy just to go to my local town, my local one-horse town, which is 40 minutes away. It's like 10,000 people. No, and they've got a cinema, and it's basically like a murder sauna. It's a massive barn which is clad in pine, and it shows like Stephen King movies, good movies, and there's always like 3 people in there, and it's dark all around. There's no lighting around it. It's fantastic. It's like it's a great place to watch a scary movie. It's the perfect place, and the entire staff is one family. It's like the mom doing the tickets and the dad doing the popcorn. It's wonderful. I want to go there. I want to go to that town, have a hot dog, or that's all there is in the town, and then go to the movies, and then go back. I just want a few hours on my own. That's what I want.
Oh, you know what I've been doing? Well, this reminds me of you a little bit. I've been doing these train journeys on YouTube, where they've put the camera at the front of the train, and there's all these great Norwegian train journeys, and they last about 5 or 6 hours, where you just zone out in front of YouTube, where it's just the train from Oslo to the top of Norway. Or there's great ones in France, and you just do all these like vicarious. There's even some good American ones out west. You just do these vicarious. There's a I think it's a 30-hour, which I haven't done, Australian one, where you can go from Adelaide to Alice Springs.
Oh, I really want to do that.
Yeah, and it's just nothing. There's no sound, there's no commentary, there's no music. It's just you with some beers or some cocktails with the laptop on your chest, zoning out, looking at these anywhere else that's not here.
Well, I want to do that for real though. That trip, that
the famous GAN.
Yeah, we've got a comment here. Is this the panel talking about Google Street View? When are they going to talk about that? Well, I think we said right at the beginning that none of us have really used Google Street View as a way to research very much. I use it quite a lot to look at houses that I'm thinking about moving to see what the street looks like, and then I end up scrolling along and looking at other streets. But I've never actually used it for book research.
I was on Google Street View for a very brief time, and I know it was me because I had this Alien Nostromo T-shirt, and it didn't fit that well. It was before my belly got big. It was a large or maybe a medium, and I'm now an XL. So I looked particularly bad in this Alien T-shirt, and I was wearing these like terrible shorts and flip-flops. And this was just about a year ago, and I was up on 101st Street, and I was walking out, and I saw the Google camera go past, and I thought, oh shit, I'm going to be on Google Street View and looking terrible. But of course, it doesn't matter because they blur out your face. But I did look really spectacularly bad because I looked a bit like the comic book guy from The Simpsons. If you know that trope, with the ill-fitting T-shirt and it says Alien on it and baggy shorts and flip-flops. But anyway, I was on it for about 3 days, and then I started to get proud, and I started sending the link. Hey, that's me. I'm on Google Street View stuff. And then about a week or two later, they must have sent the car around a different day, and they changed it. Oh. And I was no longer on Google Street View. So my claim to fame was I had a week on Google, and then I was disappeared.
That's bad. I think hasn't there been some kind of like crime stories that have happened because of something that they've seen on Google Street View that proved something, and wrong, an alibi, or someone's appeared. I mean, I'm sure there's a Sophie Hannah book that's not Street View, but it was a similar kind of thing where there was like a virtual tour of a house and crime happened on the virtual tour, which is always an option. If you click on a virtual tour, you never know what you're going to see on some of those house websites as well. But
there was one of those in the US, actually. Maybe it was near where Lara lives, because it was kind of a marshy pond with a local community, and they found through Street View from like an aerial view, maybe it was Google Earth, Google Maps, something like that, they saw that there was a car submerged under the water. And you couldn't see it from like our perspective walking around, but you could see it from above. And it turns out there was a body in the car. It was a murder.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's not in your area, Lara.
No, probably not. I mean, we're all very nice around here. So, but
someone's just mentioned Linwood Barclay's "Trust Your Eyes," which is that set well, watching something. Yeah. So I wouldn't read that tonight, Lara, because you're already going to have some more weird dreams about Linwood.
I don't know what he's going to tell me to do next in my subconscious mind. So yeah, I'll stick with the Robin Banks and some kind of weird drug delivery. Talking about, I tend to use Zillow more than. Do you have Zillow in the UK more than Google Street View? Because like when I'm trying to set things up, use houses, and if I just want to imagine a cool apartment in Manhattan, I'll go on Zillow and like put in the area.
Let me flip it right back at you. So many weird suburban New York houses with the interiors ever.
Oh my goodness! There's one around the corner from me right now that it has its own set of bells. Like the person that built it in the 1920s or something was a bell ringer, and the whole thing is crazy. I find those really inspiring, like weird houses and.
Yeah, there's some crazy interior decorating decisions. I saw one where they had this beautiful living room with a beautiful floor that had been laid down hundreds of years ago, and that's where they decided to put their washer and dryer in the middle of the in the middle of the living room. They were very proud of it, obviously. They had this really fancy washer and dryer. I was thinking maybe that was the only place where the pipes would go or something, but it does look very eccentric. It's like they're worshiping the washer and dryer, you know. But yeah, Zillow's great for seeing freaks and their houses.
Yeah, I love it. I'm obsessed. I get alerts all the time. Like, are you still interested in this property in the Adirondacks? I'm like, when was I ever? Oh yeah, I remember. It's just like clicking on it for fun.
Just before we finish off, we've got a few minutes left, but just to let everyone know that if you click on the link, which will go in the chat to Waterstones, there are 30% off all of our books and everyone else's books that have been on part of the festival. So have a look. Just getting that in there before we finish, but we'll continue because we've still got a couple of minutes left. I want that website. We don't have that here, Lara, so I need to find some other way to look at people's weird houses.
I'll send you a link, and I'll send you some like my top 3 favorite ones. The bell ringers are on there.
One thing I've become obsessed with in the last 6 months is maps, old-fashioned maps. So then my next standalone set in New York, and I went there on the time when I almost killed Adrian. I did that trip, and then now I have all of my walls in my writing room covered in maps, like different scale maps.
Cool.
And I love them so much. When I'm writing and when I'm thinking, I just look over and I kind of imagine myself walking up this street or down this avenue and in the park, and I love that. I've got them. I'm surrounded by New York and old school, old-fashioned maps. They're beautiful things. These ones that fold up and you can't ever fold them back again.
I have to show you quickly if we have time. This is one of my prized possessions. It's an old Ramblers map of Guernsey. It is so beautiful. I want to get it framed, but like it's just, I'm exactly the same. I love old maps, like proper maps. I think maybe that's why I don't use Google Street View. It's a bit like why I don't read on a Kindle, maybe, because I'm a Luddite, but also I like the real thing.
We've got an old map.
Maps are great.
We've got an old map that's got our house on it, but not because it was brownfield site like long before they were built. But on the day that we were viewing this place and deciding if we wanted to buy it, we walked down one of the high streets, and there's an old bookshop that sells old maps and stuff as well. And they have all these like section maps, so they're just like pieces that they've cut and they've framed. And there was one out on the front, and I picked it up, and like the exact location of our house was right in the middle of it. So I was like, clearly it's fate.
Yeah, I gotta have that.
Yeah.
I went through a stalking phase when I was much younger of J.D. Salinger. And in Cornish, New Hampshire, there was this creepy dude who would sell a little map of Cornish with a big X showing you where J.D. Salinger's house was. And I'm ashamed to say that I bought one and parked outside the back of his house for a while and did not see J.D. Salinger. Maybe he was in cahoots with J.D. Salinger, and it was a completely different house.
Yeah.
That's someone else's wrong house. Oh my God! Another sucker has bought the J.D. Salinger map.
He probably made a fortune out of that, selling that to randoms.
And then split it with JD. Like every month, they just go, "Well done, mate. You protected me from the weirdos, and here's half of the map proceeds."
We've got 1 minute left. Do you think we should start saying goodbye now, or do we just keep talking until we get cut off?
We could sing a song all together.
Go on.
You could, Will. You sing a song, Will, and we'll listen.
Honestly, I can't sing.
Can you do a Swedish song?
I can't speak Swedish, man. I've never met a Swede here apart from my wife. I don't see any humans.
Wow.
Oh, that's right. You always told me, I think you told me that the Swedes will never let you speak Swedish anyway, because
no chance.
They'll flip into English immediately. They'll just
flawless English.
Yeah. They'll never let
it's
you
impossible.
do it. Yeah.
Well, I think it's 5:30. I don't know what happens to us. I think we just vanish into a puff of smoke. So
Say
thank
bye.
you everyone for watching us. Thank you. It was a great chat, everyone. And
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys. Thank you for
see you in
tuning
the
in.
real world one day.
Bye.